This is extremely disappointing because that Donald Trump was updated. And people that believed in Donald Trump were trying to avoid. And there's just a lot of people out there that seem to be angry that at some point in time, I and others said, hey, why don't we give this a shot? Why don't we take him at face value and see if, in fact, he's serious about doing this and promoting the concept of peace? Because you can do better than going back to 2019, Nima. You know this. You know that recently, I think it was in December, he posted video clips of Jeffrey Sachs that was condemning Benjamin Netanyahu for getting America involved in those wars that Donald Trump was condemning. That's the Donald Trump I was supporting. The man that said, I'm not going to fall into the trap of Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm not going to get America dragged into yet another Middle East conflict, this time with Iran, that ends up with Americans trillions of dollars expended. That's the guy that I was saying, all right, let's give this a shot. Let's see if he can do this. I don't understand why he did what he did. This makes no sense. There's nothing about it that squares with the foundational philosophy that Donald Trump has been expressing over time since 2019 and up until recently, that said he wanted to avoid the very thing he's now has got us entangled in. I can't make any sense of it. The United States is so deeply entangled in this Israeli mess, this Zionist philosophy, this, however you want to articulate what the state of Israel is and how it has insinuated itself into the American body politic, that making peace was always going to be a mission impossible. It was, what was the alternative? The Biden administration was knee deep in it of its own making. At least Donald Trump stopped the genocide. And I just challenge anybody to say it. He stopped it. Can you say no, he didn't? Don't tell me what happened yesterday. I'm talking about when he was the power behind bringing a ceasefire that had Palestinians dancing in the streets of Gaza in joy. Donald Trump did that. Moving forward, he has to deal with the complexity of an Israeli government led by Benjamin Netanyahu, the man who Donald Trump singled out as being responsible for dragging America into war. One would think that having articulated a posture that said, I know the problem, and the problem is Benjamin Netanyahu, and I'm not going to let him take me down the path of prior presidents whom I condemned for getting dragged into the wars, you could say, okay, if that's his foundational thinking, then everything he's doing up here is tactical in nature, meaning that he's dealing with situations as they arise, complicated situations that no American president has been able to solve ever, and he's trying to move things. So you give him the benefit of the doubt, and then the Israelis break the ceasefire and bomb Gaza. This could have been stopped by Trump. Didn't have to happen. But it appears that the United States is 100% behind this action. And now we see the United States carrying out actions against the Houthi, because the Houthi, of course, have always linked their actions in the Red Sea as being linked to Gaza and the humanitarian situation there. And if Israel breaks the ceasefire, the Houthi begin attacking. So now we've doubled down on that, and it appears that we are moving in the direction towards conflict with Iran. So the very thing that Trump said he wasn't going to allow to happen, that he was cognizant of the forces that drag us in that direction, and he gave it a name, Benjamin Netanyahu. He's basically allowed Netanyahu to put him in a position where America is heading towards another Middle East conflict that will cost American lives. And this one could get even worse. This could be the ultimate bankruptcy machine. If we do, in fact, get into a major conflict with Iran, the impact on global energy security will be devastating and will have a horrific impact on the American economy at a time when Donald Trump can't afford to have that. All the changes he's trying to do, which I call revolutionary in nature, are predicated upon some form of economic stability, predictable economic trajectories. And so you go on and you see him taking a harsh stance against the Iranians, irrationally harsh. But wasn't that stance he took about Gaza and the depopulation of Gaza irrationally harsh? And yet it resulted in a counter proposal. So you say, good Lord, okay, trying to look at past actions, maybe He's just setting the stage to compel Iran into taking a different tack, one that maybe the indirect approach. Again, because you're always scrambling trying to figure out what the hell Donald Trump's doing, because his statements make no sense. They're way out here, except when you relate them to the foundational philosophy that you have articulated in your tweet. To avoid a war, you're like, gosh, how do we square the two? We have to assume that what he's doing is not to get us into a war, but get us out of a war. Maybe recognizing the difficulty of American-Iranian relations right now, he's deliberately trying to drive the Iranians into the hands of the Russians. It appeared that's what they were doing. The Iranian president said, we will never deal with you, America, but we will deal with others. And he was having a conversation with Vladimir Putin about how to resolve Gaza and how to resolve Iran. So it's not a stretch of the imagination to say maybe he's punting to Putin, to let Putin take over this thing to achieve the ultimate result of denuclearization and peace. Why the president allowed Netanyahu to do this? Because now we have a carrier battle group. Come on, Elon Musk and Doge. I'd like you to do a cost comparison of how much it's going to cost us to go into this military conflict with the Houthi that we're not going to win, versus telling Netanyahu to simply let the humanitarian goods in. I think you're going to find that we're going to lose billions, tens of billions, maybe even hundreds of billions of dollars over the course of this effort, and we're not going to win. And all we had to do is pick up the phone and pay whatever Ma Bell charges for a conversation between the president and Netanyahu, or send Steve Witkoff over, spend a couple $1,000s on airfare, and tell Netanyahu to cease and desist. For a guy who believes in balancing the budget, this was really the easiest thing in the world. But the arrogance, we're America, we dictate outcomes, people must listen to us, do what we say. We could have prevented all of this if we had respected the legitimacy of the Houthi position, which is we are here as Arabs, as Muslims, defending our fellow Arabs and Muslims in Gaza from, please ceasefire, get the humanitarian goods in. They weren't asking for Israel to surrender. They weren't asking for anything unreasonable. They just said, stop it against the people of Gaza. And when they stopped, the Houthi stopped. And that should have been a clear signal to the president. The easiest way to keep the Houthi out of this conflict is to keep the humanitarian goods flowing into the civilian population of Gaza. And now we're trying to dictate to the Houthi, who don't give a damn. They don't care about being bombed because they've been bombed for a decade. If you don't think that these people know how to survive in bombing, then what are we going to do? Escalate? Let me tell you the other reality about the United States right now. We have no clue who or what we're bombing. Okay, these are mobile relocatable targets. We're going to hit sites that we think there's something there. We're going to bomb them, but look what happened. This is a repeat of Desert Storm all over again during the counter Scud campaign that I played a very big role in. We didn't blow up a single target because we couldn't find them. We didn't know where they were, but we blew up a lot of buses. We blew up a lot of tents. We blew up a lot of trucks. A whole bunch of innocent people in our frustration of trying to stop a military problem we didn't understand. We don't understand the Houthi problem. And yet we're going to continue to escalate and bomb. According to Donald Trump, it's going to worse than you've ever seen. All we're going to do is innocent civilians by the thousands, putting us on the same page in terms of acts that the Israelis are. Till recently, I was actually in contact with a spokesperson from the Yemeni Ministry of Defense, a Houthi. And this created a dialogue and ability to learn more about them, but also to have discussions trying to explain America to them. But because of the sanctions and the redesignation of the Houthi as a terrorist organization, that channel of communications is now closed to me. And I just want to point out to the American people that when you start shutting down lines of communication, because we need information, you're not going to get accurate information from Marco Rubio or from the Trump administration when it comes to this issue. It's going to be highly polarized, incomplete data. I'm not saying that the Houthi are always right. I'm not saying that they always tell the truth. I'm not accusing them of not, but I'm saying it's imperative that we make sure we have access to all information sources so that we, the people, can make the best decisions possible. And yet we have the Trump administration shutting down any opportunity to speak with the Houthi directly and find out what their point of view is. The American people need to know that the Houthi of Yemen have been in war with the America via proxy since 2014. the Saudi Arabian Air Force using aircraft provided by the United States of America, dropping bombs provided by the United States of America, bombs targeted by the intelligence provided by the United States of America, have been pummeling Yemen for a decade, and Yemen hasn't blinked. The United States got involved in participating in these attacks last year, or even for over a year now. We've been in a quasi war with the Houthi because the Houthi are very principled people, and they said, we will not stand by idly while this taking place. And then America said, no, you can't do this. And we started bombing them. Terrible bombs, according to Trump. My God, what? Because Donald Trump ordered a bomb, it blows up with greater explosive force than the bomb that was dropped under Biden. Trump is an idiot. I hate to say that, and my wife is going to be very mad at me for saying this, but this is the kind of stupidity that a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has said, Mr. President, stop. Cease and desist. The Secretary of Defense has to do an intervention, say, please don't do this. You are making us look stupid. You're putting us in a bad situation, and it's unbecoming of the Commander-in-Chief to speak in this fashion about conflict when American lives are on the line. Treat the Americans with respect, at least. Use words that impart the dignity of the service they are giving you instead of treating it like a childish video game. Mr. President, shut up, and that's what he needs to do. Shut up. The Palestinian people of Gaza must be allowed access to humanitarian goods. The blockade must be lifted. And until which time those conditions are met, we will prevent Israeli shipping from transiting through the Red Sea into the port of Eilat. And they succeeded in shutting down the shipping. The port went bankrupt. The Israeli economy was devastated. Now, this is a Houthi action against the Israelis, and America stuck its nose in it. If you're going to drop bombs, but quit pretending that because you're Donald Trump, the earth shakes greater because you dropped the damn bomb than somebody else. The bomb blows, doesn't care. The Houthi, they don't give a damn, Mr. President. All you can do is drop bombs, and your bombs won't stop them from firing missiles. And then you want to now threaten the Iranian people the same way. It isn't going to work, Mr. President. And what's going to happen are one of two things. One, you're going to look foolish because you're going to have to back down when your Secretary of Defense says, we can't escalate any further without putting 700,000 boots on the ground. That's a major invasion that will cause the entire region to blow up. Oil prices will spin out of control and your economy will crash, and you're finished, Mr. President. You're done. Everything you're trying to do, the American people will not tolerate $120 oil because they can't economically. All the changes you're making are predicated upon a foundation of economic stability, which will not be here if you throw oil security, energy security out the window by going to war with Iran. Stop it. Or he will actually go to war, thinking that somehow American bombs ordered by Donald Trump take on some sort of angelic property and blow up with greater violence and more terror than any other bomb ever made. And then the Iranians will shut down the Strait of Hormuz, blow up American installations, destroy Israel, and invite an American nuclear retaliation. And boom, the man who thought he was going to get the Nobel Peace Prize will go down in history as the greatest warmonger in modern history. The president should have sent Steve Witkoff to Benjamin Netanyahu, punch Netanyahu in the nose, headbutt him in the face, put him in the chair, and say, lift the blockade against Gaza right now. You're done. You're finished. Stop the blockade. Get the humanitarian goods blowing back in. That's what should have happened. But no, we can't say no to the Israelis, apparently, or the president just isn't smart enough to realize the ramifications of what Netanyahu did, not realizing that the Houthi linked. The reason why the Houthi stopped firing their missiles last time is that the ceasefire came in as they demanded, and the humanitarian goods flow, and the Houthi were people of their word, and they said, we're done. But no, they allowed it to happen again. Mr. President, you can't bomb these people into submission. Saudi Arabia has been a war with the Houthi in one way or another for many decades, and they always lose. Every time they come in, they lose. Now, the Saudi Arabians drew an arbitrary line on the map. If they continue this fight with the Houthi, one of the reasons why they had to have their ceasefires, the Houthi said, hey, you keep wanting to do this, we'll just come and take our territory back, which means they're going to take the southern part of Saudi Arabia, and they were moving in that direction. They can't be beat. They can't be beat. These are the toughest people in the world when fighting on their own territory. And the Israeli president came out and said, that Israel is on the cusp of a real civil war, not a civil conflict, not civil unrest, a shooting civil war between the opponents of Netanyahu and the supporters of Netanyahu. That was before. And a whole lot's happened since then that has only further torn Israeli society apart. So Israel is literally a nation that has unbridgeable gaps. And the consequences of this will more than likely be some sort of civil conflict involving armed parties on either side killing Jews. And prior to October 7th, 2023, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis in the streets demanding the resignation of Netanyahu as he sought to change Israeli basic law so that he could take political control of the courts so that his corruption case would never go to trial. And even reserve pilots said, we will never fly again. I think more critically is the one that hardly anybody's talking about. Seymour Hersh has written about it extensively, and that is the absolute violation of law and breach of national security used by Netanyahu in an effort to shape a very politicized argument about the hostages. It was causing him a tremendous amount of political harm, to shape that argument in a way that was favorable to him, but in absolute departure from the facts. He misrepresented a document whose secrecy was such that it was kept locked up in a room. Nobody was supposed to acknowledge its existence. He not only revealed its existence, but took the contents of this document and deliberately misrepresented it to spin it as if Hamas was the one responsible for sabotaging a hostage release deal, when in fact it was him all along. And he is now under investigation for lying to the Israeli people and for violating national security by leaking a document he had no authority to leak. When I was a weapons inspector in Iraq, about halfway through, we'd always ask the Iraqis, do you have any missiles you haven't declared? And then it became apparent that they actually had an SS-21 Tochka, which is a short-range ballistic missile, but it had been provided by Yemen. And wait a minute, but I thought Yemen doesn't have any capabilities. So Yemen provided the missile. They were experts in the missiles. Yemen had its own ballistic missile manufacturing capability. The Houthi, the Yemenis, have scientists trained in Western universities. They've produced from scratch hypersonic missiles using their own calculations, their stuff. They may receive some assistance from the Iranians on guidance and control in terms of components that are incorporated. You denigrate the Houthi at your own risk. These are very sophisticated, educated, cultured people. And Marco Rubio would do well to go get advice, maybe sit down with somebody like Alistair Crook, who has experience in the region, and can set him straight on this. And the other thing is he needs to be careful about linking Iran and the Houthi together in a way that makes Iran culpable for what the Houthi do, because the United States provides a hell of a lot of weapons to a lot of people around the world who do a whole bunch of stuff with those weapons. And we open ourselves up to be treated in the same fashion. I would say that it's a mistake to denigrate the Houthi. Just like when I have people talk to me about Iraq, I was in a conversation the other day with somebody. They said, clearly the Iraqis got all their support from abroad because they're not capable of doing this on their own. I said, you don't know anything about the Iraqis. That extremely well-educated, capable engineers, some of the best in the world at what they do. And that's why they were able to accomplish what they accomplished.